is an NHS consultant psychiatrist and a fellow of the Royal College of Psychiatrists. He is an engaging and passionate international speaker on the subject of which we're talking about in our emotional wellness and mental health. Dr. Ajayi is the founder of Tripath Care Emotional Wellbeing Hub and runs the Tripath Care Mind Gym courses. Dr. Ajayi has been featured in national public mental health media campaigns and multiple BBC interviews on mental health in Black and church communities. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome with me on stage to the first ever Every Emotion is Valid Convention 2023, Dr. Taiwo Ayodele Ajayi. Please, let's give him a round of applause.
Personally, I rock your body. I promise you go home, you want a daddy. I give it to you like you never had it.
Right. Yes, please. Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's fine. Right. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to be here this evening, and particularly I just want to say thank you to Princess Folaji for putting this together. It's really humbling just sitting there this evening, this afternoon, and hearing all the thoughts that are being expressed in the room. I want to start by saying on behalf of the mental services in the UK that I'm aware that sometimes we've not always lived up to the expectation of people from that are under our care. And on behalf of that service, of the UK mental services, I want to offer an apology that at the times when we've missed it, it's not intentional, and that we are work in progress. Every single day, we are evolving. We are getting to be more culturally sensitive. We are getting to be more culturally aware. And so on behalf of everyone who has felt traumatized by our services, I really want to offer a genuine apology. Let's start from the fact that I'm hopeful. I want to start on a very hopeful note. The title, the theme that I've been given is a cultural mind shift as a tool for tackling stigma. So how does a cultural mind shift lead to tackling stigma? Tonight, a lot of things have happened here. One of the things that I celebrate here is actually the vulnerability in the room. Vulnerable everyone has been, and how people have just really expressed your thoughts and found it to be a safe place where you can express those thoughts. And that gives me hope, and I will tell you why. I want us to look around this room this evening. Let's just look around the room. Let's look around the room. Let's think about what it was like for the lots of Africans, black people, in the UK 20 years ago. Let's think about what the black man was known for 20 years ago. And now we're in this room. There is an African lady hosting an event in this quite a plush hotel. And every one of us are sitting here. I want to start on a very hopeful note. And that note is this, that mindsets do shift. And that actually, the fact that we are here doing what we are doing today is a signal and a message of hope to us, that the stigma that we want to tackle is actually possible, and that things do change. And that's the note I really want to start on, that our mindset can shift. If we are here today doing what we are doing now, it's a message of hope to us that we can project to the future and project with a sense of hope. So, mindsets. Mindsets, really, what's a mindset? Really, I like the mindset because our minds were set at a particular time. Some traumas of our life, some challenges of life had brought us to a place where we actually put our minds to a particular thing. It's a set of beliefs, it's a set of attitudes, it's a set of behavior that we have imbibed as a result of things that we've learned, things that we've been taught, things that have happened to us, has made us to particularly fashion our mind in a particular way. But the good thing is that it was set that way, and we can actually reset our minds as well. Actually reset our minds. When people talk about stigma, people wonder that, actually, maybe people who are mental professionals don't suffer from stigma. Actually, we do. People might say, what's your personal story? You are on the other side of the table. But actually, I have a personal story in the sense that every single day when I go to work, every single day, there are people who feel that, one, people who are mental providers are people who ought to be abused or who ought to be subjects of abuse. That's one. The second thing is that even within the system, there are stigmas that we confront. There are stigmas that we deal with because there are colleagues who tell me, you are a mental professional, you're a psychiatrist, you are odd, you are weird. And that sort of thing, those are the type of things that we deal with every single day. But let's come back to the subject of mindset and stigma. So we know what stigma is. Stigma really comprises of three components. Stigma comprises of three components. One of them is stereotype. We develop a sense or a particular sense of beliefs, a set of beliefs, sets of attitudes towards a particular group of people. There could be widows, there could be people with mental problems, there could be people who are less well off than us. But there are a group of people that I want to flag up in this room today whom we have not mentioned, and those are the young people. In our communities, as black people, sometimes we equate age by automatically age and experience to wisdom. And it's not always so. So we have in our homes, we have in our communities, we have in our churches and our mosques and our religious places, in our charities, we have young people who have emotions that they have to contain because nobody is going to listen to them. Because nobody wants to listen to them because of the reason of their age. So we've talked about stereotyping. Stereotyping is one of the features of stigma. But then, when we then begin to have those wrong attitudes that are based on wrong opinions, it then moves on to prejudice. Prejudice is when we then begin to our emotions flow towards those people. Let me give an example. There are people who still believe that people with mental difficulties are people who are dangerous, even though that's not based on evidence. We know that people who have mental difficulties are, in fact, more likely to be victims than to perpetrate violence. So if we believe that somebody who has a diagnosis of a mental problem is somebody who is violent, our emotions towards them is likely to be an emotion of fear and an emotion of avoidance. We try to avoid them. We try to move away from them because we really can't trust them. And that leads to the next step. From stereotyping, we go to prejudice. From prejudice, we then go to discrimination because people who have a mental problem are dangerous people. I'm going to avoid them. And then, as a result of avoiding them, I'm also going to get to the point in which I put them at arm's length. So if somebody of that nature comes and applies for a job, I will be wary about giving them. If they wanted to move, if they moved into my neighborhood, I will keep them at a distance. So we move from stereotyping to prejudice, and from prejudice, we actually move to discrimination. And that's exactly what stigma is all about. However, what I really want to focus on today is not the prejudice or the stereotype or the stigma itself, but what can we do as society? How can we change our mindset? And the key thing is this, that stigma festers on ignorance. Stigma thrives on ignorance. The person who believes that people with mental problems are dangerous, that's ignorance, and it's genuine ignorance. Many, many times, we are genuinely ignorant. So the call out that I want to make to us today is this. The call to action is this, that if we are going to fight stigma in any way, if there's going to be a mindset shift, we need to get knowledge ourselves. We need to deal with our personal biases. Every one of us has unconscious biases. Every one of us has things that are not aligned, that are prefabricated opinions, attitudes, perspectives that are not accurate. And we use those to actually deal with other people and to scar them. The word stigma is actually, when we look at the word stigma and delve deep into what it means, it will help us to step back and be cautious. That word stigma is actually a Greek word, and it was coined from the stamp that was put on criminals and slaves in the 17th century. So when they say somebody is stigmatized or somebody has a stigma, it actually means that somebody is marked. And that mark is a mark of shame, is a mark of punishment, and it's a mark of approval. So really, the point I'm trying to make this evening is this, that if there's going to be a shift in that mindset, it will start with you and I in this room. And many times we think, I don't have the power to change anything. I have the power to gather information. I have the power to gather information about mental illness. I have the power to gather information about what the plight of widows are. I have the power to gather information about the plight of the Gen Zs and the millennials in our communities. I was sitting there and wondering, what's the lived experience I'm bringing to this room? The lived experience I'm bringing to this room is that over the last 2 or 3 years, I probably have spoken to about 50, if not more, Gen Z and millennials. And it's about their mental problems. And every single time when they speak to me, the recurring theme is this: my parents or the adults in my life don't get me. And that's worrying, because sometimes it has driven, I've spoken to Gen Z people who, the time they were having a chat with me, a one-to-one, I just sensed that, let me ask further and ask about suicide. I didn't think it was going to be a positive. It turned out that it was actually a positive, that person, a few days before, had actually did their final acts, and they were ready to do the deed. So what I'm trying to say is that really there's a power within us to actually make that mindset shift happen. Apart from getting knowledge and looking inwards and looking at our own biases, the next thing that we need to do is that we need to be advocates. Every one of us here can advocate for people who are in the disadvantaged group. Every one of us here can be a voice. Every one of us here can help to move the dial in the right way. And the other thing we can do is to actually challenge discrimination when we see it. Every one of us has a voice. Many times we say, I don't have a voice. Every one of us has latent power to challenge discrimination, to challenge stereotype, to use a different language. One common one we use in our communities is, we say that person committed suicide. But since 1963, suicide has ceased to become a criminal offense. So when we say somebody committed suicide, somebody who has been distressed enough to get to the point in which they take law into their own hands and take their own life, we say they committed an offense. We are putting the blame yet back on them. Distress in life and distress in death. Because even at the time when their life is still taken, we are still blaming them for opting out when they didn't find any other way out. The final call I want to make to us is this, that we can also speak to power. Every one of us in our sphere of influence can change the narratives in our organizations. Some of us run charities, some of us are CEOs of charities, some of us have organizations. And many times I ask, how many of us actually have representation in our charities? How many of us have Gen Zs and millennials sitting on the boards? That's how to move the dial. That's how to shift mindset. Because when those people come, they're going to come with a different mindset. They're going to really challenge the things that we used to believe, that we think to be true, but are not. Finally, I want to leave this with us, even as I round up. My challenge to everyone sitting here this evening is this, that what are we going to do to change the mindset, the cultural mindset that is that propagates stigma in our communities? Every one of us has latent power. Every one of us can do something to change the status quo. And my word to you tonight is this: let's find that power and let's use it. Thank you for listening.
We're going to go in straight.